All right.
We're on. Welcome, everybody, to another adventure in books with Source Booksellers. We are so delighted this evening to have a wonderful writer with us this evening, and Allison's going to tell you all about that. I just want you to know that we are Source Booksellers, and we are an independent bookstore specializing in nonfiction books. We cover lots of categories of health and well-being, history and culture, the arts, travel writing, books by and about women, economics and business and politics. So we have lots of categories that we cover in our inventory at Source Booksellers. This book tonight is really great because it's right on time with books by and about women and health and well-being from a recreational point of view and writing. So we just welcome you to this evening, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy our author, and come and visit us at Source Booksellers in Midtown Detroit. Allison, tell us about our author.
Well, first, I'm going to say that we've been loving this book since it was released. When I first saw a copy of it before it came out, I just fell in love with the image on the front. But then I looked inside and I said, oh my gosh, there are a few people that we know. Carolyn Finney did a wonderful event with us for her book, White Spaces, Black Faces.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kept looking, and the Penniman sisters have such a relationship with with the Detroit Food Security Network here that the connections just kept going and the inspirations kept going. So thank you so much for editing this edition. And I'm going to just tell everyone a little bit about you. So we have Erin Sharkey. She's a writer, an arts and abolition organizer, a cultural worker, and film producer. Currently in living in Minneapolis, but in a dreamier place right now.
Yes,
I'll
tell you more about that.
With help me to say it right.
Janada
Pettis.
Yep.
Of the experimental arts collective called Free Black Dirt. And there's just a book that the co-founder released that just came out recently called The Grand.
Could we please give the police departments to the grandmothers?
Yes, please give the police department to the granddaughters. And we have grandmothers. And we have copies. It is a delightful book. It's a picture book, everyone. Oh, so back to Erin. She was awarded the Black Seed Fellowship from Black Visions and Headwaters Foundation. Holds an MFA of creative writing, and you can definitely see that she's excellent at this, from Hamlin University, and teaching, currently teaching in the Minnesota Prison Writing Project.
Yes.
And so today we're talking about A Darker Wilderness, Black nature writing from soil to stars. And my first question was, when you started this project, did you start it as a book, or did it come together and it had to be a book?
Yeah. I did have a vision for a book. It sort of was this perfect culmination moment where I had a press locally in Minnesota who was interested in talking with me about a book. And I also had just started teaching a nature writing class with Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop at Faribault Correctional, which is a facility here in Minnesota, the largest one in the state. And I also had a residency in the Anderson Library at the University of Minnesota, which houses the Givens Collection of African American History and Memory. And it just felt like a perfect storm of like the amazing writing that I was witnessing my students produce in this nature writing class, and the ways that they were approaching the idea of nature was really expanding for me, expansive for me. I really felt like my own definitions of nature were really growing, and the boundaries of nature were really falling. They were seeing nature, not just its importance in their childhoods and in their boyhoods, but also in their everyday lives, which nature isn't a thing that I imagine happening in prison. But they were really like craning their necks to look out their window to see how the clouds were telling them about the weather, about the change of time. They were marking the ways that the ducks in the yard were acting differently today than yesterday. They were thinking about the yellow jackets that were bouncing off the windows of our classroom. And that felt like if they could find the liberatory, amazing connection with nature in such an oppressive place, I thought that could be a central theme in a book. And then the archive also was so, I started out reading some narratives of formerly enslaved people that were taken during the Federal Works Commission. And they actually were from an area of Mississippi where my family's from. And I was excited to read them. And I'd never read a firsthand account of enslavement before. And in the very first narrative, the woman being recorded was talking about how much pride that their family had in the garden. And to be honest, I'd never thought about the garden as a different place on a plantation than the fields. And it was liberating for me to think that there was an opportunity for pride and for autonomy in such an oppressive system. And so to hear someone talk about how proud they were of their auntie's terrapin stew, or how great the tomatoes were in the garden, it just made me think, oh, the garden is actually, maybe that's the liberatory place. So I started looking at garden club rolls from the 1940s, which is where I found this image that's on the cover. I was going through pictures of the images of women and the things that they were making and growing. And I just love the look on her face. She's not begging for approval. She's just presenting straight. Yeah, she's so beautiful. And I also got to I read some cookbooks, I read some farmers' almanacs, and I got really inspired, particularly learning about Benjamin Banneker and his work. And so those were the seeds of the project. It really came together. And some anthologies are assemblies of previously published work. This collection, the vast majority of this work in the book is brand new in the world. Laurette Savoy revisited an earlier essay that she wrote in her book Trace, where she spent time thinking about the legacy of racist place names. And she felt like it had been 10 years or so since she drafted that, and so much had happened because of the brutal murder of George Floyd and the uprising of people and the response to that violence, that communities were now contending with and renaming places. And so she revised that chapter, she added on to it. So, but besides that, all the rest of them are brand new. And so it was really exciting to start from like the seed of an idea. And I had a dream list of writers. You'll see that many of the writers in the collection are maybe primarily poets. And I adore what poets do in long form. I just feel like there's something like really magical about it.
Did you already know Michael Kibler-Diggs? Did you already know?
I did. Yeah, he is a dear friend of mine, and we're in a writing community together here in Minnesota. And he actually wrote a poem several years ago about going fishing with his grandfather. And I said, Michael, that's an essay. Please write that essay. And for most of the writers in the collection, I was just a big fan of their work, or a big fan of them personally and of their work. And so I reached out and I said, this is the little bit I know, and I think that you can really, hit this topic out of the park. And so it was really miraculous to watch them come to be, to start for little tiny ideas. I sent them each a few archival objects to think about, to like, oh, does this make you excited? Is this like a spark for you? And then worked with them to develop the essays to the versions that are in the book.
Wow. So I only know Michael from poetry, but I was so excited.
Okay.
I was so excited just to read, something else, maybe just some prose. So
yeah, and he's working on his second book is a book of prose about swimming and his body in water, and I'm really excited for that. Look out for that in the next couple of years.
do I look excited
but the
too?
Yes.
Okay.
The other thing that's exciting about his entry is that for each of the essays in the collection are anchored by an archival object or in conversation with an object. I really wanted to use those objects to emphasize that Black folks have had a relationship with nature since before the inception of this country, and that and often that relationship is one of stewardship, of really care, and of stewarding of nature. And so I wanted there to be archival objects throughout the book. In the case of Michael Cleaver Diggs, he was able to connect with a family member who had some of his grandfather's prized possessions in their family collection. And was able, through very many communications, convince that relative to mail his grandfather's tackle box and fishing lures to Minnesota. So we were able to archive them for the very first time. So that those materials are now in a digital form that other folks can interact with and think of what interact with the power of the archive that way. So I was really proud of being able to issue one more object into the archive.
Awesome. So now this archive, it's digital. And
well, so
Is it-
I was in a physical collection, but one of the projects of the University of Minnesota and the Anderson Library is a project called Umbra Search, which is a digital aggregate. So it brings together digital objects from collections across the country, small ones, private ones, school, university ones, statewide ones. So you can actually go there and search topics that you're interested in, and it will bring you to the collection that it's housed in. So many of the objects in this book are featured in the Umbra Search collection, but they are owned by University of Virginia or by Temple University. Depends on the object.
I just want to tell people they could go see it.
Yes, check it
There's
out.
more
It's
to
a
this
really
book.
good tool. Yes, and there's more information about it in the book.
Did you find tools that were handmade, that people had made their own
Mhm.
tools for their gardening, or really the non-essential things that they could do for themselves, like having their own garden? That's such a history. And when people came from the south to the north, what they did is have gardens in their backyards, and
Exactly. Yeah.
grew their own food that way because the habit was there. And I just wonder, has been the research you found that some of them even made their own tools or created a tool that was useful for them?
Sure. Yeah, there are definitely objects like that in the Umbra Search collection. I'd encourage folks to explore it. Some memorable tools that I found in the collection, there's like hand hewn divining rods to find water, those are really beautiful sticks to find in the collection. Also like handmade hairbrushes, hair combs, that sort of thing. At one point I was looking for recipes for hair products, which there are a few in the collection that you should check out. Yeah, it is just the tip of the iceberg. And I think that when you can find the sort of objects that interest you, it tells you where they have the physical objects, and they are often many more objects there that aren't digitized. So it could encourage you to go to the collection that's near to you, or one that houses something that's of interest to you. There's the tackle box. There it
It's
is.
also
Isn't it
in the book.
beautiful?
Yes, but I love that it's archived and it's a real thing.
Yes, right.
Yeah, yep, me too. It feels really special.
So I'm really excited that this book has a Detroit connection, and that you were really able to kind of bring it to us. And I'm so thankful to everybody that had a hand in this for us today.
It was a group effort.
Yes. And so
Sure.
we did, sort of talk about this event, like celebrating Earth Day with us, when you're going to focus on the earth, focus on Black nature writing.
Yes,
So,
yes.
I mean, we're celebrating it all. But
Yeah.
do you think this is a good time for us to talk a little bit about it?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it for sure. Do you want me to introduce Ronald and Ronald's essay?
I
Does
can
that feel
read.
like
I can
the right time?
read. Let me see.
His bio is in the very back
I got
of
it.
the book.
I'm reading
Okay,
it.
cool.
Okay.
Sweet.
Ronald L. Greer II, pronouns he and him, is a multi-genre writer and poet whose poems and stories have appeared in Doors Adjacent, Night Colors, and Drop a Kite, among others. He is a 2019 Paula J.
Caligari.
Broadside Award winner and is co-editor of the forthcoming anthology, America
Precariat.
Greer spent his formative years in Detroit. What up, Doe? Okay.
Yeah.
Nourishing his grandfather's urban gardens.
Awesome.
And
Well, I'm so sorry, go ahead.
there were many gardens in the city, and there was a group, and they were called Gardening Angels. And some of them would have gardens in the front lawn.
And the other thing to remember is that Detroit had the only urban 4-H club program in the city of Detroit.
Oh, cool.
So I just love all these connections. And we sometimes, I guess, we don't think much about gardening, but it's really been a thread that's run all the way through the history of Black people in Detroit. And I would say others too, because we brought the habit of having a garden and chickens as we came up from the South. And in Detroit, you can still have a chicken or two, can't you?
Maybe
I think
three.
it's still,
I'm not sure.
I think it's still okay. And so that's really bringing people in touch with their own food source, which we talk about a lot now, given the corporate farms and all of that, early on, people were sensitive about having access to their own food in their own way. So I think that this book that we're talking about of your editing today is perfect for Earth Day. We tend to think that things are far away from us, some of these days that are named, but they're right in our backyard and in our history and our ancestry that's current. So I too am very appreciative of having this book for now. So
Thank you. So Ronald Greer is a writer who is part of Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop. He wrote a very short piece, a page long, that I heard him read just before the pandemic about his grandfather's garden. And it was just a gorgeous nugget. And I thought, maybe we could do it. Like, can we expand this one page into a 25-page essay for the collection? And I asked him if he could do it, and he said he would do it. And then we got into the pandemic, and I think there isn't a worse place to be in the pandemic than the prison. It was a really violent place to be. Lots of death in Minnesota inside of prisons. And I know Ronald had COVID at one point and was living on a cot in a gym with other sick people. And So it's kind of a miraculous feat that he was able to complete this gorgeous essay. And I was so lucky to get permission from the Department of Corrections to visit him on publication day. And so I got to share with him the reviews for the book, and especially a review that said his essay is the best of the collection. And I believe that it is just really gorgeous. It's been such a gorgeous gift to us. So I was hoping that he could join us. But because of the rules of the Department of Corrections, that's not possible. But we were able to, with help of several people from Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop, get a recording of him. So actually yesterday, the director of Prison Writers drove 3 hours north and 3 hours back to get a physical copy of this for us. So I'm going to play a video of Ronald reading from his essay, The Magic Alley.
Oh, we get to
Oh,
meet
good.
him.
That's good. Mhm.
Yeah, you'll get to see him. Let me share my screen. I'm going to share the sound too. That's an important component. All right. See if it will let me do it. I'm sorry, it's saying that I need to. I'm having trouble. I'm sorry. Let me troubleshoot one thing. Is it showing you things?
Yes.
Yes, we see him, but we don't hear
Is
him.
that you don't hear him? Okay, let me stop the share. Sorry, I really thought this was going to work.
That's
That's
okay.
all right. We're all doing this way.
If I share sound, will that help?
I don't think so. It's saying that I need a password
Password.
all right. Yeah, bummer. It's saying there's some reason that you need a password to share the audio of it.
Okay. Let me try to go.
Yeah.
Audio settings. Okay, hold on.
See if I can find the password. Hold on one second.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't
Share screen.
okay. Let's see if this works.
Did that work?
No.
Okay.
No I apologize
worries.
for this.
No. Let me see if I can fix it.
If we can find another time, we can do it.
No. Let me see.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to go in here. Hold on, give me a second. Meetings, setting.
Let me see.
Range.
Let me try one more.
Okay, see if it works now. I mean, don't see if it works now. Hold on.
Oh, that's such a bummer.
You want to send it to me?
I can try to. I will find your email and send it quick. Yeah, I'll send you the shortest one. Just this is the small.
You can send them both.
Yeah, it's saying it's too big to be sent.
Oh,
I think my Zoom wants me to log out and reboot my sound. That's what the delay is on my end, is that it
okay.
won't do the sound unless I log back out. So I could
Okay.
read from his selection. I'm sorry that didn't work, but
That's okay. We're
I
going
could
to have
also log out and log back in if you want me to do that too.
Sure. You want to try that?
Okay, sure. I'll be right back.
so I was
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks everybody for watching. In the meantime, I want to say a little bit more about the book. I was going to say, there are essays. These are all essays in the book. And it's 239 pages with, I think, about 10 essays. Yes, 10 essays plus an introduction and a foreword. The foreword is by the person that we mentioned, Carolyn Finney, who wrote the book, White Spaces, Black Faces. And then they also get into the land, the water, as she said, fishing before, just a wonderful way of understanding that we have such a long history of being in nature, being with nature, and using the natural world for our sustenance as well as for our pleasure. This book, I think, is a wonderful addition to our inventory at Source Booksellers. We have a section called Ecology and Sustainability, and this fits right into it. We have a category called By and About Women, and so here's another way that it fits in the store. So I hope those who are watching will come to the store or go on our online site, which is sourcebooksellersonline.com, and order a copy of this beautiful book, A Darker Wilderness. Okay. We were just talking about the book to the audience a little bit.
All right, let's see if we can make this work.
Okay.
It's doing the exact same thing after I did all that business. I'm sorry about that.
All right.
Can you send me the little one, or they're both too big?
They're both too big. I could send you one through WeTransfer if that's useful.
Well, let's read from it, and then we'll fix it later.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. I'm sure when we're not on the clock. Do you want me to read from his essay or from the introduction? Doesn't matter. His essay.
His essay, if you can.
Sure, of course. All right. I'll just start from the beginning.
Okay.
And you'll see each of the essays has an object, but this one does not. And that's in part because of the rules of Department of Corrections. And so there's no object there, but I encourage people to read that that spot where the object should be, and continue, think about the violence of the carceral system. Magic Alley, Ronald L. Greer II. I cartwheeled and played hide and seek in the same place that the people who doubled over from wicked medicine walked in zombie-footed strides. In the same place, faces peered from the edges of weathered window panes. Here, I built a clubhouse out of pieces of abandoned homes. These homes were empty of love, but never of people. Pieces patched together to create a castle for children who could never sit still or tame their free will. The place where I created my castle became my playground, a drab, drug-infested, gravel-paved alley in the heart of Detroit, along the main artery of the city, Woodlawn Avenue, between the streets of Pasadena and Grand. Out of an artless life in this narrow strip, my imagination created fierce and ferocious creatures. And it was there I learned the difference between the child's world and the young man's. Wrapped in the landscape of crumbling structures and unkept lawns, I disappeared in and out of garages and fields of orange-hued dandelions. I jumped from rooftops deep into dungeons and fought back the touch, the kiss, the sickle of death. I played my childhood games, participated in countless hours of roughhouse basketball, and found magic in what most would define as urban blight. Unbeknownst to me, I was heavily protected by my grandfather, Charles Ramsey, and his shining light that sliced through the darkness, using nothing but compassion and generosity. In the garden attached to the alley, I witnessed my grandfather bend his tired body and pluck red tomato from its vine. He walked to the garden's edge towards a man I'd never seen before. The man, shabbily dressed, stood on the sidewalk. My grandfather handed the tomato to the man, gave each other a head nod. The man proceeded along the sidewalk, and my grandfather returned to a rusted metal milk crate that he had been sitting on before the man stopped to watch us garden. I was barely 10 years old in the mid 80s when I first started exploring Detroit's alleys. During this time, my childlike lens allowed me to see people and places for more than what they offered at face value. Every neighbor possessed their own variation of power. Every animal was a pet, protector, or savage, and every building a kingdom. The years I spent playing in the alley provided me with memories that only a child's imagination could create. But I also learned that the fun had in this alley could be equally deadly. Kicked over an old Maxwell House coffee can, and you might find a four-finger set of brass knuckles, a small manila envelope full of powder, or Chuck's hidden gun. I'm not sure if there were always hidden weapons throughout the alley, or if I just had a knack for finding stuff I wasn't supposed to find. However, I found guns, drugs, knives, and sometimes I found a person. Once, on a cloudy summer day in 87 or 88, on an expedition to cross the street, Jannard, Ronnie J., Chauncey, Harvey, and I found a body of a darkened man. He lay in the doorway of an empty, war-torn building that the land was reclaiming for itself. A tree sprouted into its crumbling walls. The man was twisted in death, his limbs pointed in unorthodox directions. We gathered around him and spoke chant-like phrases. Who is he? How did he get here? We should leave. Check his pockets. We're going to let in trouble. We all spoke in broken unison until our words breathed life back into his being. He growled and cracked his body in line, then ripped a belt from around his forearm. It took me some time to learn why sleeping people sometimes always wore belts around their forearms instead of their waists. The dead man erected himself from the doorway, dark and impossible, and as he arose, we ran from him in defeat. We were no match for his magic. We were experts in finding treasures, but we had no powers against resurrection. So, there.
That is, oh my goodness. We're not finished with him yet. We're gonna
No.
make sure
Yes, and
everybody
now
hears him.
we'll figure out the video gets.
I just want to ask you, you teach the writing to the people who are incarcerated. How stunned are you that their imagination is so rich?
I mean, I am moved all the time by the amazing art that they're making, but I don't underestimate them anymore. They have so much capacity for crafting just really gorgeous things. I mean, I think it's a feat to have any kind of imagination under those oppressive circumstances and in those places where things are really drab. And so, but I really have found some amazing writing community there of people who are making really brave work, who are have access to descriptive qualities and lyric qualities that are able to create just beautiful pieces of art out of sometimes very hard circumstances.
I
And
guess
they're writing about all different things. They're writing about their childhoods, they're writing about their favorite uncle, they're writing about their day, working in the kitchen or whatever their job is. Just a whole range of things.
yeah, I guess I'm not surprised by them doing that, but what I'm getting at is that your capacity to teach them must be extraordinary because it takes a personal touch, I'm sure, to bring that possibility out of people and to bring that imagination. I could hear it in his words and wondering, how did you guide that kind of imagination?
Yeah.
It's a compliment to you in a lot of ways. Something as a
Thank you.
teacher.
Well, I mean, I am not the only person who's been an educator in that space. So I really credit the other educators with Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop. And Ronald's been really working hard for many years on this work. And we find that the writers in our program, because they are not taking a class for credit, which is very important. And there are lots of folks pursuing degrees inside and stuff like that. But the group of writers who are part of our classes are using their little free time to be part of a writing community, and they meet with each other, they encourage and teach each other. And so I think I'm an okay teacher, and I really get excited when students are winning, and really like when students are achieving what they're hoping to achieve in their description or in their meaning making or their reflection of their life. But yeah, it's a whole community of people, and many of their best teachers, I think, are each other, are other members of their writing community inside. And we're really lucky. Yeah, we're really lucky in Minnesota because we've been doing this work now with prison writers for 10 or 11 years. And we have our first students coming home. And so we're really working hard to create bridges for folks to come home and to be part of communing in really meaningful ways, because the literary community in Minnesota, we're so lucky to have these folks. So yeah, I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
Let's talk about Carolyn Finney's introduction.
Yes.
Let's do it. Sure. Yeah. Carolyn, what a sweet, a sweet human Carolyn Finney is. And I was so inspired by her work, Black Faces, White Spaces, and a few other collections, Camille Dungy's work in A Color of Nature. There were a few books that were inspiring to me, and Carolyn's was one of them. And I reached out to her one of the very first people I reached out to be part of the book. And we talked about a lot of options, and we're writing and sending work back to each other and having lots of conversations. We felt like in the end, that having her start us off in this conversation that's happening in this book would be the best way for it to fit and for us to work together. So yeah, she's reflecting on her own experience with her parents' work in lovingly stewarding land for her whole life, much of their lives, and that land is not land they own, and so there's sort of a real violent separation from a sacred place for them, and so yeah, it was holding all the themes of the whole collection that I really wanted folks to have access to. And so yeah, I felt so lucky and that she's so generous with us, and yeah, what a gift. I'm excited to be in further conversation with Carolyn, for sure.
Yeah.
I think for us, speaking of Carolyn, I think in a way she helped us have the glue to stick our category together that we call sustainability and ecology, because she brought so much to us. It was very early on across the street. That her book came out and we learned about it and were able to bring her in. But it gave us a pathway to seek other writers and naturists, I guess you might call them, naturalists, in this whole field of ecology and sustainability, which is one of our major categories in the store. Yeah. So yours is in there too.
Okay, so
I can't wait to see it in that section.
After her introduction, I'll tell you my favorite page is 19.
Page 19. Let me see.
Because I believe you were saying that nature writing
Mhm.
is rooted in the American experiment. What?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I was like, where is that page? It's in the introduction. Um, so I think that it's important to remember that nature isn't neutral, that nature is a political space, and it's important for us to remember that power structures and policy impacts our personal relationships with place and with nature in particular. And so it's no accident, it's by design that when you ask most folks, like, what is nature? They talk about, making sure you have the right like Patagonia gear and that like you climb a mountain and you're like pushing your body to the limits and you may go somewhere no one has gone before. And I think that that's such a reductive and narrow view of nature. And I think that it's valuable for us to think about the ways in which we have some work to do to unpack the violence of redlining, of racial covenants and deeds, of sundowner towns, of Jim Crow laws, of slavery that is still persistent in our relationship. So the fact that Black folks have had to navigate travel in this country using the Green Book or using a network of connections impacts our connection to nature and how much comfort or safety or access or competence we feel in nature. And so there are several writers in the collection speaking directly to that. Glenn Pogue, who wrote the essay about the 4th of July. Her mother is an innkeeper. She has had inns in the Northeast for many years. She was featured on a Oprah Winfrey Network show about her inn before the pandemic. I don't know when it was, many years
Yes.
ago. So I was so excited for Glenn to reflect on the history of Black travel and so she looked at an inn that was in Martha's Vineyard, which is a historically important place for Black travel. And so each of the essays in the collection sort of intersect with this idea of the American question. Like, have we achieved freedom and equality? Is this the land that it was set out to be, of opportunity, of equality? And when it's failing, like whose back is it failing on? Who's doing the work to help us to have a better union? So I think the themes of liberation are through all the essays in the collection. I think are sort of touching on that, and I wanted them not to all be like pro nature, because nature is complicated, and some of us feel real fear in nature. I know as a big person, as a fat person, and as someone who has had asthma my whole life, I came into the world wheezing. There are many times I've been in nature, I felt like antagonistic with nature because my body is itching and I'm wheezing and I'm not sure about my ability to do things. And I'm contending with that image of like climbing a mountain and staking your flag, which I think that if there's a benefit in us thinking about nature in our intimate spaces, in our bed, like in this room I'm in right now. Nature is here too, because I am nature and I'm part of nature. And the sun moves across the room and it creates different feelings. And I have a plant in the corner and it's, nature is here, and we don't need to have to go there for nature. Like, we can have nature where we are. And but still, because it's a thing around power, it is a thing we can talk about. In Minnesota, I live in a place with abundant green spaces, abundant wilderness. Part of our personality as Minnesotans is that we go up north to the lakes. Minnesota is a place that is full of farms. There's 70,000 farms in the state of Minnesota, but the vast, vast, vast majority of those farms are growing feed for cattle or for animals, or they're growing fuel. So for oil or bio oil, or for high fructose corn syrup or something, but not really the food for people. And so I think as we're like addressing climate issues in this country, looking towards small scale Black and brown and BIPOC and Indigenous farmers in Minnesota are the real examples of the way that stewarding nature can be a relationship. It can be thoughtful of the living things there, of the resources, of the water, of the groundwater, of the soil quality. And that's like, it's all interwoven together. It's all there at the same time. Minnesota only 25% of Black folks own their homes in Minnesota. And that also means that they don't have the same we don't have the same access to lakefront property in northern Minnesota and all the residual benefits of having time in nature. Many people don't get to see their parents in a canoe or like not working. You know what I mean? Those sort of things have benefits on our physical bodies and our mental health and our outlook and our level of stress and all that stuff. So I wanted it to not feel like a fluffy pro nature book. Like it is, nature is gorgeous and it's integral, but it's also something that is it's important for us to fight for and to think about how we can undo some of the damage done by hateful, racist policy and try not to make the same mistakes.
Yeah. And there's so much, I guess, thinking or narrative around that we don't go into nature, so we don't know it.
Right.
And so, you know, there are efforts like Outdoor Afro, let's all go on a hike and things like that. But there are some families that have gardens and they have just spaces that they've carved out. And it could be just mowing their lawn and it being the most beautiful thing they've ever seen. That's an act of being in nature.
Yes. Yes.
Because it is. I mean, if you think about so many urban people, you know, like dwellers, people that just live, even to go up north in Michigan, there aren't a lot of us up there, but you know, we could pitch a tent. My husband and I do it all the time, but not in great number because it hasn't been something that we felt we could do or have time to do. Like, okay, I could just stop and jump in a tent and look at the stars.
Right. Or feel safe. Like there are places in greater Minnesota where I don't feel safe because some of the images that I'm seeing on, you know, lawn signs in support of hateful politicians that will not be named. You know, I think that's real. So here, you know, we 2.5 years ago, I with a group of friends took over the stewardship of a retreat center here in Minnesota. It's called Root Springs. We took over 2 years ago in February. And we're really aiming to center LGBTQIA people and BIPOC folks in nature here. So before we even started taking over, we invited a bunch of folks in our community out to the land, and we did an audit together of how was the journey up? Did it feel safe? Like, how could it feel safer? How can we, like, does the land feel good? Would you use this place? Would you come out here? And resounding, folks were so enthusiastic about having access to a place like Root Springs. So we worked really hard with a group of supporters. We raised money really fast. We were able to pay off the land in our first year. So we own it outright, and we will own it and steward it for the long term so that people can continue to be in relationship with this land. And we have a program called Community Supported Retreat, which is similar to like community supported agriculture, where you support a farmer by paying at the beginning of the season, and then you get a box share throughout the year. Community Supported Retreat is a way for folks to invest in themselves and us as a project by prepaying for 5, 10, or 20 nights on the land. And so they will be coming back over and over again. And we've had over 600 folks overnight stays on the land since we took over. And it's been such a joy to feel like we're creating a safe place. We're stewarding a place that is safe for folks to start to grow further their relationship with nature here, and to get confident in the skills of creating, you know, making a campfire, or hiking in our woods, or wearing snowshoes, or canoeing on our lake, sort of thing. And we have a real heart for continuing to do that work and inviting more and more people out to see us here. So if there's any Michigan folks who ever get out this direction, we'd love to host you at Root Springs. We have 3 small cabins on the land, one named for Pauline Murray, one at the high point of our land called Windrise, and one a geodesic dome that we've named in honor of Octavia Butler. And yeah, we are going to continue to invest in the land. I think in the fall we'll have a hot tub, which will be perfectly positioned to look at the stars. We have this gorgeous view. There's a place in the land where you can feel the whole dome of the sky. You can feel the wind, the night sky is on your peripheral vision too. And I was hoping tonight we were going to have a cloudless sky because there's supposed to be a meteor shower over North America tonight. But we're cloudy, so no meteors for us. But yeah, I'm so excited to have this, this relationship with this place, and to know that over time I'll continue to fall in love with it and know it better. And this is our third spring, and everything's emerging from under a huge blanket of snow, and our springs are coming alive and unfreezing. So there's water everywhere, and there were 16 white-tailed deer, like juvenile deer, on the land yesterday, and they were just standing. Like, I think they seemed like they had like 12-year-old boy energy. They were very like very curious about us and us about them. And
were they looking?
they were looking at, they really, I think, were trying to eat from our trees. They were trying to get any spring buds or any leftover fruit at the bottom of our orchard. So, but it's their land, so we make room for them.
So on this Earth Day, which is a national and international effort, I think that to tie into that, as African American people, and as those of us who are interested in education and knowing, I want to say a few words about the use of Earth Day from your point of view.
Yeah. Well, Earth Day reminds us that we are part of Earth, and that there's so many things that are teaching us, or like trying to emphasize our nation or our state, our particularities. But the Earth is something we all share, and it's a finite thing. And so we have to protect it. And we're getting so many messages about the stress that the Earth is feeling. And so for it to continue to be a place that holds us and provides for us, and that we have to care for it. And it is a reminder that my actions have consequences, all, in places that I don't know, right? Like there's cause and effects that are happening. And so I think that it's important to remember that our care, that our stewardship, that our like thoughtfulness about how we use resources, how we use objects, how we consume food, how we travel, all those things are important to reflect on, and not just on Earth Day or Earth Month, but all year. So it's a nice touch point to come back. And I love that it's in the spring, because there's so many things budding. There's so much possibility. It's a reminder that there's still possibility, that we can work together to come back from the edge of this climate disaster that's happening around us. So, and I found that inspiration in so many books by Black folks, by African Americans. I think about the ways that, Black writers have been talking to us about that for a very long time.
Spring is the perfect beginning of the year.
Yes.
It's really the beginning of the cycle of growth. Not so much January 1, but really more like the spring equinox.
So before we hop off, I want to thank everyone that's been hanging in there with us. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat, or we can bring you up so you can ask it yourself. If you don't have a question, we just want to thank you for being here with us.
And hold the earth close to your heart.
One more thing.
Yes, please.
And the wonderful writers. I mean, I don't think we can say enough about the writers in this book, and the fact that you pulled together and edited this wonderful volume of writing about the beauty that just surrounds us all the time, and the possibilities that the natural world has for us.
And we're going to say our friend Kaya Miles
Yes.
blurbed
Oh,
it.
yes.
Yes, she did. Yes, 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 yes.
Yes, I was so lucky. The blurbers in this book are,
Yes.
yes, I felt so honored by all their
Yes.
words and thoughts. Yeah, I was so glad that Ty said yes, and Ross said yes, and Drew said yes, and Kiesi said yes.
Yeah.
Really
Mhm.
lucky.
Mhm.
All of our favorites, really. So
Yes, for sure.
yeah.
Well, I look forward to coming and seeing you in person someday in
I was just going to
Detroit.
say, you're going to have to come over here.
I would
In the
love
same way,
to.
I
I
have to go
haven't
to the
been back in a
retreat.
few years. Yes,
Right,
come this way. I'll
right.
be in Buffalo for much of May, so I'll wave as I fly past,
Okay,
and I'd
Okay.
love to make some time to come and see you out in Detroit sometime.
right,
Wonderful.
right, right.
Wonderful.
Thank you
Awesome.
so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks so much for
Have
having
a,
me.
have a wonderful day tomorrow. And
Thank you.
best wishes for, a good effort there at the retreat. So
Thank you. Yeah, I hope the weather's not below 0. That's all we
okay.
want.
We want to remind people.
Oh, we want to remind everybody, our call to action is always that we have a Darker Wilderness in store and online at sourcebooksellers.online.com. And it is not only a delight to read, but it's a delight to reread. And you can get it at other
Yes.
independent bookstores if we're far away.
Yeah.
We're closer to you.
And yes, I think that we did really well really early. So they've done a reprint already. And those are in. So if you were
Good.
struggling to find it, you
Mhm.
can get it now. So
Okay.
get it from your local bookstores.
I
Yes,
love it. I
please.
love that it's success.
Yes,
And-
me too. There's worse problems to have.
Yeah.
And if we get the audio of the writer,
Yep. We're gonna
It-
post a finished edition. So
if we
Yeah.
get an audio of the writer in
Of
the book
Ronald.
of Ronald in the
Yeah.
book,
Yes.
if we might
We'll
be able
figure out how to get
drop
them to
drop
you.
it into our YouTube, and after they clean it up a little bit, but maybe we can drop it
Yeah.
into our YouTube. Yeah.
yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Thank
Yes,
you so
thank
much,
you for making that
Erin.
effort.
All right.
Have a
Great to
joyful
meet you both,
birthday.
and have a good evening.